Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Coates. I will be the moderator for today's LGBTQ in Aikido 2.0 discussion, where we talk about LGBTQ issues and LGBTQ people who practice Aikido. This time we're going to be speaking with the older generation. Last time we spoke with the younger generation. So I think we'll get a nice variety of perspectives here. I train at AKI Los Angeles, Aikido Kenkyukai Los Angeles, under Leah Suzuki Sensei, who has been generous enough to host this panel for us today. Good morning, Leah Sensei.
Good morning.
And we've got some great panelists today. I'll just pass it around and let people introduce themselves and where they're from and a little bit about themselves. So we'll start with Cath Sensei.
Hi everyone. Cath Davies. I'm English, but I live in Ireland. So I've lived in Ireland for 3 years. So I guess when I'm speaking today, I guess I'm speaking more from a UK perspective than an Irish perspective. I've been doing Aikido for very nearly 40 years. So look forward to sharing some of my thoughts, such as they may be, with you all. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. And Kayla Sensei.
Hi, and welcome everyone. I'm really honored to be here today. It's nice to see all these beautiful faces. I started Aikido as a child, 1973, when I was 9 years old. So my perspective is going to be slightly different from some of the other panelists, and been practicing and teaching for 48 years and just fall more deeply in love with Aikido every day. The pandemic has actually brought in a lot of creativity to myself, my students, my dojo, and I think the Aikido world in general. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And thank you. I want to just quickly, Leah Sensei, thank you ever so much for organizing this. It's really amazingly generous and beautiful thing that you're doing for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
And Greg Sensei.
Hi. Thank you all for coming today, and thanks to the organizers. My name's Greg Angus. I'm the chief instructor at AWMAI Aikikai in Toronto. And I also spent 10 years at Hombu Dojo back in the 80s and 90s. And I'm very happy to be here today to join this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jamie Sensei.
Good morning, everybody, or wherever you are, evening. And thank you so much, Leah Sensei, and all the organizers and everybody for being here. I'm here with, I would say, a lot of gay pride and a lot of Aiki pride and gratitude, tremendous gratitude in my heart. I've been training for 45 years. It's kind of a shock to be part of the older generation, but I guess that's the case. And to share from my experience and to talk with everybody, all of our friends, esteemed senseis and panelists. It's really exciting, especially after all these years, to be having a whole panel and panel series on this topic. So great, thanks for that. And I'm don't have a dojo now. I used to. We'll talk about that. And I'm a member of the Aiki Extensions Board and one of the founders of our new Aiki Solstice Seminars project, which has been started since the pandemic.
Amazing, thank you. So we'll jump right into the questions, and we will have a short Q&A session afterwards. And for the Q&A session, I'll let you know when it's happening, but you can just message me the question if you have one directly. You can go to chat, and then if you see there's a little blue box at the bottom of the chat screen, and you can just find me, Chris Coates, and send your question. But without further ado, we'll get into the questions. Looks like we got a lot of happy birthday, Kayla Sensei. So come in and so happy birthday, Kayla Sensei.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here for your birthday.
It's a pleasure.
Well, I'll turn over the first question to you then. As instructors in dojo-cho, how do you encourage tolerance and acceptance among your students in your dojo and practice? And do you feel like your dojo and the place you practice is a safe space?
Yes, 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 and yes. You know, I want to share really briefly. I was invited to be on this panel, and there's a lot going on in my life, and at first I said no, and then gave that a lot of thought. You know, why am I not wanting to do this? And questioned myself very deeply. Was this some internalized homophobia? What was going on for me? And the questioning has brought me into a much deeper place with the whole topic, you know, LGBTQ and Aikido. And I'm very grateful that I needed that time to question. I wanted to make sure to share that with all of you. I've been running a dojo since I was 17. And when I first opened my dojo, I did not have any idea that I was queer. I didn't know. I mean, I think there might have been a little inkling for me, but it didn't take too long before I started to sort of realize that something was up. And I think that having done Aikido since a very young age, my mind and body feel very open. So the dojo itself has an open, inviting, warm quality to it. The community, the Aikido Berkeley community is very warm and inviting. And my students and I have had some really nice conversations about this recently because of the panel today. There's so much more I could say about this. I think, you know, the fact that Aikido of Berkeley is in Berkeley, and probably most of you around the world know that Berkeley is a very progressive place. It's a very, it's almost, you know, it's sort of like going into another world sometimes. So, you know, in my own childhood and growing up experience, I really have not had to deal with intense homophobia. It's been pretty clear sailing for me. A few of my students have come forward and said, "Oh yeah, Sensei, you know, our dojo is a very kind of like a cocoon. It's a place where people can come and I think I'll pretty much immediately feel welcomed and warm." So I'm. If anybody has any questions about that particular question that Chris has asked me, I don't know if we're opening the mics until later, but that's good for now. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll open them later on. I might have a question for you actually. So
yes, please, please.
So Greg Sensei, how do you feel about encouraging tolerance and acceptance in your dojo? And, you know, do you feel it's a safe space?
Yes, I do. I think Nakaima, the people here, the students and the instructors, everybody's very open. And, you know, similar to Kayla, living in Toronto, it's a very cosmopolitan, very mixed city. So we've never had any difficulties with that. You know, people are queer, gay. We have some students, what seems to be important is when people come through the door, we all greet each other. We always say hello. And that's something I think everybody does, but it just creates a nice, equal, warm vibe. So people feel comfortable, they feel relaxed. There's no aggression or tension in the dojo. So I would say, yeah, it's a very positive and very safe place.
Amazing. So we'll move on to our next question. And we've only got Jamie for this one, but I'd be interested to just quickly hear the beginning of this question from other people. But what led you to practice Aikido, and specifically for Jamie? Did the gay liberation and the women's movements of the 70s, 80s have anything to do with that decision and an interest in martial arts? So we'll start with Jamie.
Well, I started Aikido in early 1976. I was a student at Stanford, and I had never heard of Aikido. I grew up in the Midwest. I didn't know anything about martial arts. Who'd heard of empowerment? You know, I can't take credit for any of those, consciousness and those things. But my first two girlfriends, Margie and Linda, were training. and told me about Aikido, and I just thought it sounded way too good to be true. So I went very cynically, and in fact, it was incredible. But you know, so I want to say that I started Aikido with my girlfriends, thanks to them. And Duran Sensei was, you know, the head instructor at the time at Stanford, and was very welcoming, very open. That really wasn't an issue. And so that was great. And I just was training on, you know, my own self athletic merits and things. So that was great. And in 1980, I opened the first ever women's Aikido school in San Francisco. And that's when things started to get a little bit more of an issue. It's like, what, a women's school? Like, why? And how can you separate, you know, the sexes? And why would you have your own school? And the truth is, it was in San Francisco. There were a lot of my students had tried to start training. If anybody remembers the old Aikido of San Francisco at Turk Street, it was on the second floor and there were steps going up there. Yeah, Kayla was there. And, you know, I had students who told me that they walked up the stairs, looked inside and walked back down and couldn't start training. They just didn't feel comfortable. And when I opened the women's school, it was, you know, a majority, I would say, lesbians, gay, but not all. And it was certainly open to all women. But it really gave a space, excuse me, a space for, you know, gay women to train. And it was really interesting that I didn't have hardly any support. Kayla came to teach, and a couple of people, Kathy Park Sensei came to teach on occasion. She's not gay, but nobody would come to my dojo. And it wasn't really looked upon very favorably. I would say, even though I had tremendous students and many are still training, several have dojos today. And through the years, you know, I've always been, I guess you'd say, an activist. I never hid being gay, but it wasn't like I was out there leading with it. I was leading with Aikido. But, you know, I think it started to impact my ability to get promoted later on. It's hard to verify that. Certain things just, you know, got less comfortable, I would say. And I should also mention that about 2 years into training, I met some women, gay women in Berkeley, and they were training in different martial arts. And we all started getting together and creating these women's camps that turned into the Pacific Association of Women Martial Arts Instructors. On the East Coast was the National Women's Martial Arts Federation. And this really was a time where issues of abuse, rape, violence against women, take back the night, empowerment was really coming to the fore. And so I feel like I've been kind of in that stream all along and been part of the women's martial arts movement, which has been very, very important. However, the crossover and the connection and women coming from the Aikido world to women's martial arts and back and forth and in the karate worlds, I haven't seen that there's been a tremendous flow. It's almost been like, you know, some reason to stay away in a certain sense from the sort of traditional or more male-dominated martial arts worlds. So I think that there have really been issues and that it's been very important that we've been present, we've been training, and that where we are today, and if you think about it, it's, you know, 40 some years later to have a panel like this. So it's taken a long time to really bring these issues out in the open, I would say.
Thank you. Next question, we'll send to Cath. Given the increased adversity at the time, you know, when you started Aikido, how did you approach the issue of your own sexuality when you started Aikido? And has that changed over the years, and how, you know, were you just right out in the open right away, or was it something you felt a little uncomfortable about?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Well, I started a week after my 13th birthday. And although I suppose looking back, I would probably now say I was probably always gay. At that point, I didn't know, it wasn't the name I would give it. You know, I didn't think about it. So certainly it wasn't an issue then. I suppose by the time I was 17, 18, 19, I was sort of clear that I was gay. And I mean, I guess I dealt with it in Aikido as I've dealt with it in other areas of my life. Is just I've been upfront, and when I say upfront, I don't mean, you know, that I have felt the need to announce that I'm gay. But if I'm talking about a partner, I'll use a female pronoun, and I won't hide that. You know, I know that some people would feel, perhaps if they don't feel quite so safe, quite so comfortable, they wouldn't feel able to use a pronoun that gives away the gender of their partner. And I think I've been very lucky that both in Aikido and in my working life that I haven't felt the need to hide that. Chris, you're on mute.
Sorry, Greg Sensei? Yeah, sorry, Greg Sensei.
Yeah, I have a similar experience to Cath. When I was in Japan, of course, all my friends knew because we would hang out together, and I would use male pronouns to describe my partner. It was never really an issue. I mean, it never really came up with, you know, any of the shihans at Hombu, or if they knew, I don't know. If they didn't know, maybe I was overly quiet. I was a little bit self-censoring, I think, at the time. But it really didn't make much difference to the practice. We just carried on, and then we'd hang out in the coffee shop or go for a drink or dinner or spend time together visiting different dojos. It was always a positive experience. And over the years, I've come to be more open about it, I guess, in terms of how I express myself. And joining this panel was personally important for me to do this publicly, for myself, of course, but also in the hopes that, you know, if somebody's having an issue with this, they might gain some strength or hope, or be able to reach out to any of us about the topic. So yeah, that's about it.
And Jamie Sensei?
What exactly did you want me to address?
You know, there was a lot more adversity at the time when you started Aikido. So how did you address your sexuality, and has that changed over the years? Yeah,
well, as you know, I mean, I started with my girlfriends. So it was, I've always been out, and I came out when I was, 20, 21. And I've always felt that it's important to be out, because, people, once they experience me, okay, I'm nice, I'm smart, I do fine Aikido, whatever. It's like people have to either change their opinion of me or change their opinion about, homosexuality or being gay. And it's like, oh, so they have a different experience of someone who they like, they respect, they enjoy training with. So I felt that it's important to be out. Interestingly, I just want to share a couple stories. One is that in the kind of Gorbachev era, 87 and 91, in the former Soviet Union, I was part of being the first instructors with my teacher, one of my teachers, Kayla Sensei, to go over there and teach. And I've also taught quite a bit in the Middle East. And so people have always asked me, like, do they know, right? In cultures where it's even dangerous to be out. And I've always said, it's nothing that I ever hide, but it's kind of like, it doesn't really get talked about. And then it's like, well, maybe I have no personal life. Maybe I have no partner. Just sort of like this whole omitted thing, which is kind of weird. But one time in Russia, I think it was 1989, I had caught a bad cold or something, bronchitis, and I was out of my own trip. I was the head instructor, but I had to be in bed for 3 or 4 days. The Russians used to bring me things every day, make me happy, whatever. And the last day, thank God, I was kind of well enough to be dressed and want to go just watch class before I could, get back to it. And guess what they brought me? They brought me a woman. And like, no kidding. This woman was classic. I mean, tall, and the bun and the makeup and the fishnet stockings and the whole 9 yards. They brought me a woman. So it's like, well, I guess they know, yeah. Nothing that I talked about. But, fortunately, we kind of went downstairs, got the taxi, I went to dojo, whatever. That's, what'd you do, But anyways, what that let me know is that, or start wondering about, it's like, what do they bring all of our, these male senseis, our teachers, right? When they go and teach here, there, and everywhere. And I really don't like to think about it too much. But that was, I think, a pretty interesting and telling telling thing. I do want to say, since I've mentioned my girlfriend Margie, she absolutely loved Aikido. She became a veterinarian after Stanford. And in 1989, when I got home from that particular trip, I learned that she had committed suicide. And so her parents had given her so much grief about being gay. And, you know, life was just hard, and it really got to her to that extent. So, and she loved Aikido. She wasn't able to practice as much as she wanted. And, you know, it's always broken my heart, honestly. And I feel like I've carried on in Aikido for so many reasons, but also very much in deep gratitude and honor to her. So I kind of want to make a bit of a dedication of being on this panel to her and to Linda, who really, you know, were out there right early on. It's not always been an easy road, and I think we need to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Sensei. Thank you for sharing that. This next question's a doozy, but LG people do not often fit into or conform to normal gender roles. How do you think Aikido, as it's been practiced, follows, reinforces, or challenge those notions of power, you know, masculine and feminine, men and women, what men can do, what women can do, and either, you know, reinforces or challenges those? And we'll start with Kayla Sensei.
Thank you, Chris. Well, for me, I do feel that Aikido has been an incredible support for my my desire and my passion to move my body. I remember the first time I was called a tomboy. I was in class, actually. I was in a kid's class in Aikido. I was probably about 10, and I was rolling around on the mat and doing my thing and practicing, and these two boys came up to me and said, "Are you a boy or a girl?" Because I was often mistaken for a boy, as Jamie probably remembers. I don't know, did you meet me when I was already a teenager? Anyway, so, you know, they said, "Oh," and I said, "Well, I'm a girl." And they said, "Oh, you're a tomboy." And that was the first time I had heard that word. Kind of rolled it around in my head and was like, okay. Generally, the practice of Aikido has been an immense support for me in my spiritual practice, my body practice. I do think that, you know, professionally, I've been really fortunate. I've been able to be, as Cath said, I don't announce it, but I've been able to be open and honest about who I am, who my partners are. My first trip away from home to teach Aikido was to Holland. And in fact, Lydia Zeidel is on the call, a good old friend of mine who I went to teach at a women's martial arts camp in Holland. I think I was 19 or 20. And that was actually the camp where I realized, oh, I guess I'm gay. I did not know that really until that camp, and fell in love with a woman at the camp. And I remember feeling there very safe, very, you know, it was a place where I could sort of start to explore. On maybe the more challenging end, coming back to the States after that trip, I did feel like, okay, now I need to sort of figure this out. Am I gay or am I not gay? And how am I going to go back to my own dojo and teach? And am I going to talk about this? And how's this going to affect, you know, my person as an Aikido instructor? How's this going to affect 30 seconds? It did take me a number of years to get to the place where I could come out and be comfortable with it. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And let's do Jamie Sensei. How do you think Aikido either reinforces and or challenges these notions of masculine, feminine, power, weakness?
Yeah. I think in a certain sense, Aikido, I'm much more comfortable in Aikido. I think that there's, Aikido in and of itself challenges in some ways the norms. And I remember when I first started Aikido, and it may be true, it's less true now, but women could wear hakama when they wanted to. and men had to get their shodan. And it's like, well, why is that? And there were sort of two explanations. One, both of them sexist in a different way. One was that, well, O-sensei understood that women naturally understood flow and connection and love and, you know, all of these things, and that men had to get to shodan to kind of at least soften those edges and start to get a sense of that. Then there was, you know, I got to cover up women's bodies, right? Can't see their legs. And then there was sort of the pedestal. Well, the pedestal notion was that women already kind of get it, you know. And so I think that on the other hand, it's martial art, this, you know, very male samurai tradition, and, you know, putting on, you know, using, we're trying not to use muscle force, but we still do. It's a patriarchal lineage. We still don't have that many women in the power structure of Aikido. And, you know, I think it's really interesting that there are very few gay men, at least that I know of, training. It's like, well, what are our different sensibilities? Can we be strong without all this muscle and brute force? Can we, taking competition out, not have the domination and the egos, but in the hierarchical structure that, you know, kind of comes from more patriarchal systems, and we do have that in Aikido. So I think, you know, challenging that, or for women to be strong and athletic. I remember in the beginning, you know, I was just like gung-ho and this great uke, and, you know, and it's like, well, the way it was understood that I could be good in Aikido was, well, I'm gay. It's like, I'm not really a woman. Like, you know, like, why do we have to be gay to be athletic, or be a tomboy to be powerful? And, you know, all these things are kind of mixed up, and we don't, I think it's so important to challenge them. And I think that's been changing through the years, and, you know, we're some decades down the line. But I really think that just like in government these days, to have women, or in business, not just come into these male-dominated places and fit in and be like that, but to go, oh, we do have some kind of different sensibilities that might question the power structures, and have more room, a lot more inclusivity, and for the sort of male-female kinds of, or masculine-feminine characteristics, values, to really be questioned and challenged, and to shift from what they've been. So I think that, you know, our presence is important. And as gay people, as women, as people of color, that bringing in, changing things is important. And I think that Aikido in and of itself actually is very simpatico to that, based on the nonviolent philosophy, and the I in Aikido, and the joining and blending. So I think we have a lot of potential in Aikido.
Cath Sensei?
Sorry, Chris, could you just ask me the question again?
Yeah, so how do you believe that Aikido either reinforces, challenges, or both, you know, these notions of these traditional gender norms, masculine, feminine,
Okay.
what a man can do, what a woman can do, these sorts of things?
I suspect it largely reinforces the gender norms until they're challenged. And I'm conscious, sometimes I'm asked this kind of question, and I wonder, you know, I can say, I think probably in my own organization in the UK, I probably challenged some of those gender norms, not overtly, but just because of how I am. And I'm conscious, for example, sometimes people say to me, I'm a good role model for women in Aikido, and I think, but am I? Because, you know, I'm quite masculine, I'm quite strong, you know, I'm a bit like Kayla in the sense that I was, and still am actually, in the street, well, you know, in the street, whatever, or going into a toilet, often told, this is the ladies. And depending on my mood, it depends whether I say, yes, I know, and look them in the eye, or I'm more gracious about it. So I don't know how good an example I am because of my physical attributes. So yeah, but I think my organization in the UK, you know, obviously has many male-led, a dynamic style of practice came from the Chiba Sensei route. But I guess because I'm physically able to practice in that way, you know, I know people refer to me, but people can relate to me to somewhere in between male and female, and I can feel it. And my partner recognizes that as well, that, you know, that somehow something about me, whether it's how I look or how I interact, enables people to respond to me differently. So I wonder how much people have responded to me really as a woman. I'm not saying they've responded to me as a man, but somehow I've gone on a middle path. And of course, you know, you can't pretend that in Aikido, as you get to a level of seniority, you get a level of I use the word power in inverted commas, so that's not quite the right word I want, but you gain an authority and a power because of your rank, which starts perhaps to smooth away some of the edges that might otherwise be there. You know, in terms of people looking at me and, you know, either making, you know, a judgment on how I look, on my hair, on my sexuality.
30
Sometimes
seconds.
that's because they're assuming because they're assuming something about my sexuality, even if they don't know. So yeah, sorry, that's probably slightly kind of ramby, Chris, but there we are.
No, it's great, thank you. And Greg Sensei.
I think Aikido is still a patriarchal structure. It certainly is in Japan, and I see differences in Canada, the US, and in Europe where it's changing, and I think it's changing for the best. It's an interesting question, and that patriarchy also in Japan would go along with kind of privacy. Privacy is a very important thing. So people didn't discuss their personal lives, their business lives, anything. It was just all based on Aikido, and that's how we related to each other. Back here at home, of course, it's more mixed. But then again, I've practiced with all kinds of people over the years, and I think Cath is right about rank and how you're perceived when you have rank and what that means and what kind of an example you set or are perceived to have set for people. But I think there's a lot of hope for the future, especially amongst some of the younger people. They're more open, it's more normal, they're not self-censoring so much. And I think Aikido will become more merit-based rather than just a male or a female thing. It's really about your practice, regardless of your sexuality or your gender. And I think if we can strive towards that, that would be a really good development.
Thank you, Greg Sensei. Next question, in being more represented and visible in dojos, do you see yourself and LGBTQ people playing a role in altering or expanding these gender-based notions around power, athleticism, leadership, inclusivity, you know, all of these things that are so kind of stable and fixed, you know, in our culture and so many? Do you see, you know, yourself challenging those in a way by being so open? We'll start with Kayla Sensei.
I'd like to have someone else start with that question because I need to get a quick drink of water.
Okay, Jamie Sensei.
Yeah, I think it's so important that people know that the dojo-cho, the head of the dojo, and this, you know, a very high-ranked person is gay. So, you know, I really want to just, you know, honor Greg Sensei and Kayla Sensei and Cath Sensei. And I think it's important that people know that, and that, you know, and that's a possibility too. It's like, yeah, I can grow up and be president. You know, yeah, I can grow up and be the head of the dojo. Like, why not? That's really a big thing. And what we bring, the different, say, sensibilities. We have a word now, or kind of a concept, which is being gender queer. And or we might have called that being androgynous, or some kind of blend of these qualities that we've traditionally assigned in sort of a heteronormative and male-dominated worlds. You know, years ago, a friend of mine was a therapist. She wrote a book called Breaking Out of Gender Jail. And I've always thought all we kind of need to know is the title. But she said, like, for example, the Eskimos, right? We have so many words for snow because they perceive that it's not just snow, right? There's so many different kinds. And it's like, well, we only have male, female, or masculine, feminine, butch, femme, right? We just keep making it so binary. And the idea of breaking out of gender jail is that we all have those qualities within us, and the way that we mix them, and that even in a conversation, in the course of minutes or an hour, we kind of play off those, you know, those qualities, the more assertive or receptive or whatever. And we all know that, but we don't bring that out. And I think we have a lot of opportunity to bring that out and to address that, and the whole uke-nage relationship, and the yielding and the positive key, and all kinds of the leading, the following, the connection. But I think it's this connection and building the bridge, which is really Aiki. And so I think we have so many ways that we can talk about these things, address these things, bring them into our practice, and bring out those qualities within ourselves, within our students, and to bring that sort of consciousness more to the fore. And that in that way, Aikido becomes more of the medicine for a sick world that O-sensei talked about. And he was bringing nonviolence into a very violent World War era. That's pretty incredible. And so I like to think that we're in that stream, particularly as we start to have these conversations more and address them more. And in the Aikido world itself, not over here like in women's martial arts or somewhere else or in the gay movement or something, but right here. That is so important.
Thank you. Cath Sensei?
Sorry, yeah, Chris, it's not that I'm not listening, but just after the question again. I can't, I'm so old, I can't remember.
No, just, yeah, it being more visible and represented in dojos, out in the open.
Oh yeah, thank you. Okay, yeah.
Do you think that plays an important role in
Sorry, okay,
challenging?
yes I do. Yes, I do, and I think it depends how you do it, because you could potentially alienate people. So, my experiences, and a couple of people on here who know me well, my experience is that I don't alienate people or make them feel uncomfortable around me or who I am, and I can't say that's necessarily been intentional, but it's something that I would intentionally do now, is to be aware that actually that the way in which I behave, the way in which I present myself can either make people feel uncomfortable around me or around potentially a gay person, or not. And that's something that is within my kind of power, within my gift to behave in a certain way. So I think, yeah, we do have a role to play, and we should play that role, and we should challenge. And I think that, and again, I said earlier, when you get to a certain rank in Aikido, just because it's such a hierarchical thing, you can say things that you might not be able to say as a more junior student. So you kind of feel that you have to use the position that you have been fortunate enough to attain over a good number of years for good in that way, and to challenge where you can, because there'll be other people who are coming up who won't have the confidence, either won't have the confidence personally, or recognize their position in the hierarchical structure of Aikido is such that they can't challenge, they can't speak out. So yeah, I think I do have a responsibility to speak out where that's, where I see something that's not right. I have a responsibility to speak out, and I believe that I do that.
Thank you. Kayla Sensei?
Yeah, thank you, Cath. That was beautiful. Definitely, I feel like as Jamie Sensei pointed out, Aikido is already open or special. It has a certain opening that some of the other arts don't have, and that there's this technical side to what we do, and then there's this very almost, it's like we have heaven, fire, water, earth. That heaven side is something that we can feel but not always see. And I think that gives us an opening as queer people to come forward and let the world of Aikido, the world in general, know that we are here and we can make this happen. We can invite others in. And so the responsibility is right here. It's what we're doing right now. We don't, as Jamie Sensei pointed out too, we don't really have specific words, say like Native Americans had a two-spirit, right? And that was well accepted in the culture. So it seems to me that because Aikido is a Japanese hierarchical system, really run by men, it's very patriarchal. Because O-sensei created this opening, this spirit opening, we are invited to make it bigger, to challenge ourselves. And I see us doing that. I really see us doing that. And I'm so glad for that. But yeah, I do feel a responsibility. And that was sort of what I was getting at with the first question, having turned down the offer and then thought, you know, this is really important. And for young people and anybody who's coming in and can say, oh, wait a minute, it is a place I can go and I can be open no matter who I am. Greg Sensei said something I think was really important. Most every Aikido dojo, I think, makes an effort to say hello as people come in the door. So there's this already sort of inviting quality. So yeah, good question. So much more we could say.
Yeah. So we've got one more question, then we'll open it up for some questions from the group, and we have a few. So last question, we'll turn to Greg Sensei. How has Aikido benefited you specifically as an LGBTQ person?
It's been a great sustaining influence in my life. I think Aikido is a great vehicle. It's a great tool. It grounds you, it centers you. You as one of the other panelists had said, you have both roles. You have the uke and the nage side. So, you know, coming to terms with your sexuality, I didn't come out officially until I was 30 years old. So I was struggling, obviously, for many, many years with that. And it was due to Aikido. I studied karate first when I was young, and then I moved to Aikido when I was living in Japan. And the martial arts always gave me that grounding and that center to have the confidence and the courage to try and do different things. And it really made a huge impact in my life. I mean, I met my first boyfriend at Hombu Dojo in Japan. So that kind of says a lot about how things worked out. I think it's a very positive tool for everybody, and particularly for gay people. You feel, as we were discussing earlier, you feel safe, you feel grounded, you feel welcome, you feel part of a community. And then that helps you to deal with your sexuality, if that's an issue, or any other problems that you might have.
Thank you. And Kayla Sensei?
Yeah, I often wonder what would I be like if I hadn't started Aikido at such a young age. And when I think about that question, I realize how much support the art has given me. I feel like it's in my blood, it's in my bones, my mind and body. So it's, as I said earlier, professionally, it's been wonderful for me. I have felt very supported and been able to create a dojo and a community around myself that has both fed me and my family and my community. When I went to Japan, the second and third time I went to Japan, I was already out and had partners, and I do remember there feeling the difference. I wasn't really able to, different from what Greg Sensei said. When I was at Hombu Dojo, I felt a little bit insecure, a little bit like I needed to stay back with that. And I've often questioned that experience. But I would say generally Aikido it's such a grounding, centering practice, and completely feel like there's like this, I'm a river, and the Aikido has supported that river, you know, it's just been able to just flow with life. Very, very grateful.
Thank you. I think, let's see, let me check out these. So I have one question actually for Leah Sensei, because I think that, you know, we're touching on more than just LGBTQ issues here. We're touching on gender roles and that sort of thing. And obviously, you know, Leah Sensei having her own dojo for so long and training in Japan with all men for so long has, I'm sure, experienced a lot in the way of that, the clash of gender roles and the power structures. So, I mean, I'd be happy to kind of pass one of our questions to you, which is, how do you, back to the other question of how do you think Aikido as it's being practiced really enforces or challenges these notions of masculine, feminine, power, weakness?
Thank you, Chris. Chris and I texted. I'm like, last time you sent me a question, are you going to do that again? So, and then he said, I've got one, I'll send it to you. Shall I do that? So here we are. I'm kind of winging it here, but it's a great question, Chris. So I'm glad that we're improvising here. What I can say is that I was really lucky. I landed in a place in Japan, in a group. I found myself in an organization that basically especially the Dai Senpai of Aikido Kenkikai International in Kamakura, in Yokohama, Japan, I got the feeling once I had been there and started training hard and training hard and training hard, I really had the impression that they were talking to Leah. My senpai were talking to Leah. There were a lot of people in Japan who were talking to Leah the woman, Leah the American, Leah the, whatever. And, oh, you're American, you have guns, right? Do you, or you're a woman, so you can't do this or that. So, in a sense, a lot of times I was the only Westerner in the dojo. I was the only woman in the dojo. Not all the time. Sometimes Jean-René Sensei was there. Maximo Brion was there. They dubbed us the Boston Pioneers because we went when there were no other Westerners there at the time. But anyway, so I was very lucky. I got a lot of support from my male Dai Senpai. And there's one more story that I hope I have time for. I was talking to a female kohai of mine, a Japanese female kohai. And I was saying, why don't we have any female Dai Senpai? So for those of you who don't know the terminology, Dai Senpai means like way, way senpai to you. So I was like, and I was third dan at the time, Sandan, saying to my kohai, why don't we have any women Dai Senpai? Why is it only men? I really want that person. And my attendance wasn't very good at the time. And this Japanese kohai of mine, female, said to me, it's you. It's you. You are the Dai Senpai. You are the female Dai Senpai. Please come to class more. So, yeah, my attendance shot up from there. I was only coming like twice a week when she said that to me. But anyway, so I was very lucky. And she could have said sort of like, oh, well, she's an American, so she doesn't count. The male Dai Senpai, well, she's just a girl, or she's American. But I was very lucky. So I'm not sure if I exactly answered your question, Chris, but hopefully it was an interesting couple of stories.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think Jamie's got one last thing to add, and then we got to get to some questions.
Yeah, I just want to say a little something about kind of the role we can play today for LGBTQ students. Cath had shared a story when we were kind of preparing for this about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cath, but that you were holding classes in a church and they had a rainbow flag. And so a student came in and, thinking, well, it's the dojo, didn't know that the flag went with the church, not the dojo, but came into the dojo because like, oh, this is a place I'm welcome. And that really made a difference. I've been doing a lot of work in the Middle East and with Israeli and Palestinian kids, Christian, Muslim, Jewish young people. And it's several of the kids, the youth, teenagers have felt that they could talk to me when they couldn't talk to anybody else about their sexuality, just because they knew. And I mean, these are kids training, right, in our martial arts for peace programs. And, it's really difficult in a lot of places in the world, including in America and certainly in some other countries. I think it's that we can play that role just because we are role models and because we bring, you know, options. We bring welcome in ways that if people don't know that we're gay, they just think we're, you know, Aikido, that's it. So that's the important part, I think, because Kayla, I remember us talking a long time ago. So, you know, I just think that it's important, and that we recognize that these are still really big issues that can still be really difficult. The suicide rate amongst gay kids is really, really high, transgender, and that we can play that role in being present as who we are, and as just fine people, fine leaders, fine Aikidoists, and we're gay, you know, yeah. And that becomes much more an option for people.
Great.
Thank you,
So we
Jean.
got a couple questions from our attendees here. The first question is from Lise, and this is directed to Greg. Did your experience in Japan impact how you deal with cultural issues in your dojo? As a dojo-cho, I feel like I have to be more proactive to make my dojo a safe space here in North America.
Yes, it did.
Sensei.
My time in Japan, obviously being a Canadian in Japan, you're very much a minority. So, and not speaking Japanese very well at the beginning, I really had to pay attention to visual cues and body language and all kinds of things like that. So it really prepared me, you know, for doing what I'm doing now. And also, not being a very good Japanese speaker at first, I would have to think very carefully about what I said so as to not make a mistake or not offend somebody. So I think as an instructor, I'm very tuned into nonverbal clues and cues from different people. So I can sense when somebody's uncomfortable or somebody's having a hard time, and I try to, you know, run my dojo accordingly.
And we've got a question from Spencer for anybody who'd like to answer. Besides greeting everyone who comes to the door, what are some other practical things that you can do or that you already do to, you know, create an open, accepting environment? Is it sort of just the way that your dojo is, or do you kind of really try to think about that and do it intentionally? So
Well,
anyone?
I was very inspired again, just as Jamie Sensei just pointed out, the Cath story about the rainbow flag. I had never thought about doing that. I have stickers that I've created for my dojo and one of them has a rainbow on it. But it seems that the rainbow flag is kind of this, you know, united way of saying, it's a worldwide way of saying, I'm open, we're open, and you can feel safe here. So, I mean, it's such a simple thing to do, but to put a rainbow sticker on the window. Oh, thank you. Pietro's one of my students. He's showing you our rainbow sticker. Yeah, but it's just such a simple thing to do. And yet it just speaks volumes to an eye. Oh, that's somewhere I can go and feel comfortable. And I have a feeling that even for people who don't identify as LGBTQ, to see a rainbow is like, oh, okay, this is going to be a warm place. It's such a simple thing we can do as dojo-cho.
And I want to jump in there too. That's exactly what I was thinking, and then Kayla Sensei said it. Not being LGBTQ myself, I'm not actually sure if Cath Sensei had the rainbow flag story, but
It was you.
you do.
It was you,
It was
right?
me, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, somebody else had the same.
No, it wasn't me.
Okay, so yeah, the rainbow flag. That's hanging. It just happens to be hanging at the church where we rent our space, and I didn't even like put the pieces together. I did see it one day, like when I was new there. I walked past, I thought, oh, how nice. And it also had a sign that said, we believe no human is illegal. We believe love is love. There's this whole beautiful list. And yeah, and then I think it was one of my students who's now in Europe who said, oh yeah, when I was going to Leo Sensei's dojo, I saw that rainbow flag and I knew like, okay, whew, this is a good sign. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, like I looked at it that once, had a good feeling, never thought about it again. But here it had such a strong impact. And I have to admit, I had nothing to do with it. So.
We'll have to get our own now.
Yeah, yeah.
Put it up over the entrance.
I toss in one
Sensei?
thing as well. As Kayla Sensei said, I mean, just the rainbow flag speaks volumes, and I think it says what it needs to say in a huge way. It makes a big difference. Another thing is, my wife is on the call, and she's in Israel, and you know, and in there, and she trains, and you know, we've been to Jewish and Arab dojos, and we come together. It's like, or it doesn't have to be there, wherever you are, you know, you're there with your partner, or your wife or your husband, and you use words like that, and you have your relationship is right out there. That has definitely made a difference, and I've seen that it's been wonderful to be well received. We've been in Ethiopia together, and to just kind of normalize it, and people have the experience of gay people that way and of relationship, and it's really, I think, another important way that we're not sort of hiding or pretending like as if we have no relationships or no family life and all.
I'm going to jump in for a moment. Excuse me, Chris. Thank you, Jamie Sensei. I'm noticing the time. Some of us are able to stay a little longer, and I feel like that's appropriate. But I imagine that some people might be leaving the call soon over the next few minutes. One important announcement, if you do end up going while this meeting is still on, I've had a number of people ask me if we're going to send out the link to the video after this. Yes, we are. We're going to send it to the people who opted in to be on the email list. So some of those very people who opted out, when you registered, if you unclicked the button for being on the email list, and you want to get the link to this video, please re-register and leave it clicked. The default is clicked. So stay on the email list, and then you'll get the link to the video. That's all. So we can go back to Q&A.
Yeah, we've got just a few more. Let me see. Yeah, we've got one right now from Sanya. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. For Jamie Sensei. Well, Aikido and other martial arts styles may have roots in Japanese patriarchal structures. There are also indigenous and shamanic roots to martial arts that do have gender-free language, as mentioned by Kayla Sensei, Two-Spirit. Do you think martial arts schools, dojos, leadership can play a role in dissolving gender bias and LGBTQ plus prejudice by changing and how we do this more effectively? How can we do this more effectively?
It was beautiful, the Two-Spirit talking about that. And, you know, we're practicing together, and we're engaging a couple really important things. One is power, and what's the nature of power, safety and relationship, and the whole sort of ebb and flow of relationship. We have roles, we switch roles, and exploring the nature of power. Is it domination? What does brute force have to do with it? What does love and connection and support and empathy have to do with power? What are power structures? And again, we have this inherited, very male hierarchical or patriarchal kind of power structure, and coming from war. So as we engage, and I think that we are the ones carrying these conversations forward in our students and the younger generation that we're training and hopefully making lots of space for, to engage in how do we shift and transform everybody's understanding of power structures and relationship that is life-giving. So I think that this is a very living practice, and it's both theoretical and you know, intellectual, but what's so cool about the martial arts is that we're here engaging with it, with each other at this really physical level, and training together. So I think that it's really exciting, but that it's also an area that needs a lot of work because it has come from this very male fighting tradition in the understandings of those things, and where women have been excluded, gay people haven't even been heard of, or people who are you know, kind of challenging these gender notions and roles.
Mhm. Thank you. And then we've got one last question for everybody. I think everyone really enjoyed this panel, and this is from Daniel. There's still a lot of adversity and bias and a need for acceptance in countries like Japan, the Middle East, Latin America, but also, you know, within Aikido organizations themselves. So do you guys have any plans to do anything more like this? Is this inspiring you to kind of put more of a focus on the LGBTQ community within Aikido and your dojos, or maybe just even having another discussion like this?
Yes, without a doubt. This has been very inspiring for me personally. This has been quite wonderful. And I have to thank Leah Sensei again for bringing us together. I hope we can come together more. Really important stuff. And very timely in our world right now. It's time to, as Jamie said, it's really time to make changes, to go beyond what we thought was the status quo and move forward. And this is, in Aikido, it's a great way for us to keep that rolling.
Great. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
I'll jump in. I would be interested in speaking more with these panelists and with you, Chris, and taking suggestions from others. Yeah, it seems like we're not finished, you know? It seems like it would be natural for some other events or something to happen.
I had a quick question. In Japan right now, how are gay people, are they able to be open in the dojos, or what's the situation there?
Good question. I mean, I just answered one, but I've been to Japan recently, and I would say that for me, it's not as comfortable of a place to be and to be out. That's me personally. But I also grew up there a little bit. I was there as a young person and would question myself and say, what would Saito Sensei think of me if he knew I was a lesbian? You know, what would he do or think? Maybe he would have been fine. I have to share one quick last thing. You know, O Sensei's quote, it's basically that every spirit, every body can be trained in some manner. He didn't say anything specifically that all people are welcome, but he did. And so when the four of us came together last time, we questioned, or maybe it was with my students, what would O Sensei think? It seems that he was really inclusive. So, yeah.
One thing O Sensei said is that you can't understand Aikido without understanding yin and yang.
Yes.
And I'm writing a book right now. I shouldn't say that because it's more pressure to get it done, but very Aikido based. And I've just been writing about some of these dualities and things. And interestingly, in China, yin and yang isn't said separately. There's no yin and or yin or, it's just yin yang. So there's this automatic blending, and O Sensei felt that was absolutely essential if we were going to understand life, the universe, and human society and relationship, and make peace in the world.
Exactly. Great. Well, I think that's all for our discussion today. Thank you to the panelists for being here. Thank you to Leah Sensei for hosting this. And thank you everyone for listening in. It's been great to have a nice big audience for this. And I see that everyone has been very appreciative of this. So that means a lot to me. And I think it means a lot to all our panelists and to Leah Sensei as well. So
thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.